Hello everyone and welcome back to Kroof Gaming. Just recently, Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns had its first birthday slash first anniversary since it came out last year, and it's been a year and it doesn't even feel like a year. It went by so fast and so many things have happened. And so today, I thought it'd be quite interesting if we take a look back at the old trailer, one of the very first trailers that they ever provided with us for Heart of Thorns, and kind of compared it with what we have now to see if they met their goals and actually did what they had to do to provide a decent expansion. So let's jump right into things. The first new feature that we saw in the announcement trailer was the new competitive game mode, Stronghold. Now, Stronghold as itself was a very successful map in the earliest stages of Heart of Thorns. It was quite enjoyable, it was fresh, it was new, it was engaging, it got the PvP community rallied behind it. But as time has passed, it's been a year, we haven't had another Stronghold map, and that's the only map that they've provided us with. And it's kind of boring now, visually. Game-wise and system-wise, it's quite fun. It's a good change of pace from the endless conquest matches in PvP. But overall, with this expansion, just PvP alone has gotten a lot better. The community has grown, the introduction of seasons itself has changed the entire PvP community for the better and for the worse in some areas, but for the majority of what's been going on, at least from my standpoint, I have loved the growth of the PvP community. Now, Stronghold. With the new updates that have recently been coming into Guild Wars 2, they have had so many opportunities, well, 2 to be exact, and probably more to come, but for now it's been 2 opportunities to actually implement another Stronghold map. But the 2 other maps that they've implemented have been Conquest. Now, I understand that Conquest is extremely fun and easy to watch and entertaining to watch, and it's more on the esports side. But if you're going to market a expansion with a new PvP game mode and only have 1 map that goes along with the game mode and completely forget about that game mode in general, it's very disheartening and it isn't pleasing for the consumer. So I would definitely love to see more Stronghold maps to come in the future, and who knows, maybe for the next update it will be a Stronghold map. But as of this recording date, I have no information on that, the community has no information on that, and all I can do, and what all the other people who like Stronghold can do, is hope for a new map soon. Second new feature that was introduced to us on the announcement trailer was the brand new World vs. World Borderlands. I'm sorry if you couldn't read that text very clearly, but it is the new World vs. World Borderlands. And for those of you who have been at least semi-following Guild Wars 2, you probably should know that World vs. World isn't really doing so well. It's having a lot of complications, especially with the new Borderlands and the game mode in general. A lot of the balancing is quite messed up because ArenaNet hasn't taken the approach of separating skill and class balances between the 3 game modes, that being PvE, PvP, and World vs. World. It's conjured quite a conundrum, and it can be quite difficult to work around. However, the ArenaNet team, or more specifically the team responsible for World vs. World, has been assuring the community that they are making changes, internal changes that is, to World vs. World, and some of those changes have already been implemented into the actual live client as beta. That word itself, beta, do take with a grain of salt. Usually when things are in beta, they change quite drastically. In some cases, they stay the same. Sometimes you get it right on the mark and you don't need to change anything, but with World vs. World, many changes will be coming, and hopefully the Desert Borderlands will be seeing a lot more use. It is quite beautiful, the actual artistic work that went into designing the map. I haven't gone in there many times. When I have, I've just been left with my mouth agape. It's so beautiful, and there's like different categories. It really represents the entirety of what I would think, thematically speaking, Heart of Thorns is all about, with a bunch of different environments and unique thematic standpoints throughout the map. And I think Borderlands does that very well. It's just sad that the actual game mode is suffering. The third brand new feature introduced was the new civilizations. Now, this pertains more to the story, and shout out to the bonus cameo of what appears to be the old Jaka Itzel and Verdant Brink. How I would have loved to see how the old alpha maps of Verdant Brink, Tangled Depths, Orc Basin, and Dragon Stand look like. But sadly, we shall never see. And probably for the better. But the new civilizations. Now, I would correlate this more with story. The actual Heart of Thorns story, very, very brilliantly done. It's short. Everyone knows that. I'm not going to regurgitate what is already known by the community. But the new civilizations and how they actually were introduced into the story, they seem to flow quite well. However, I still have mixed emotions. As of the state right now, we're not seeing too many of returning characters. However, in the recent episode, we have seen more of the Exalted, as episodes and events with the egg have been occurring. However, the Tekanuhawk and Jaka Itzel areas with their civilians are quite unused, and it's sad to see. The maps do a great justice at giving the new civilizations and races story. However, once you play through them a couple times, like 2 or 3 times, you kind of understand everything. And I don't know, I think I'm at the stage where I want something new. Oh, how I miss Ibli and Tizlak. Oh, Tizlak, he was so fat and squishy. Now we arrive at the topic of challenging group content. I want to say something about this photo, and keep this in your mind / image. This, I predict, is actually old Dragon Stand, and if that clip were to continue and you were to watch back, and you pause at a split-second timing, you can actually see the old version of the Heart of Thorns. Now, if you actually compare that, or the background scenery, with the actual cinematic reveal trailer right before Heart of Thorns launched, they match up quite nicely. Just wanted to point that out. Now, main topic, challenging group content. How do they succeed on that? 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. I am so pleased with the amount of challenging content that Heart of Thorns has provided with us and is still being created and brought into the game. The meta events themselves were quite challenging in the beginning, and that being said, they still have a scale and sense of threat and danger, though they have been getting a lot easier, but that's natural as the community plays it more and they get used to tactics. Dragon Stand in particular, I'm still getting in a couple maps that actually fail, and it's kind of funny to see everyone just start QQing in chat, just like, oh my god, does no one know how to play this game? I'm like, calm down. It's fun to fail sometimes, because if you just steamroll through everything, it get quite boring. So the meta events themselves, holding up quite nicely. Sometimes you need a break. You can't do them continually because you get a little bored. But the raids, oh boy, let me just tell you, the raids, when you say challenging group content, this is no joke. Now there are mechanics that will one-shot, and I know those can be kind of cheesy, and that's more of an artificial way of creating challenging content. But it is still challenging content. You do have to be on your toes, and you have to know how to cooperate with your group. And it's best to know who you're working with. Pugging, I myself am sometimes a pug. It's not as hard as you think it would be. You just really have to be focused in your own mindset and be confident in your class and your role. The other raids, the mechanics themselves and bosses, are quite uniquely designed. They each feel very distinct, have an amazing soundtrack, and is really a spectacle to look at. Even if you die, things typically blow up or you just start crying in voice chat like I do sometimes. It's not a pretty sight. Continuing with the next topic, we have new ways to explore, also known as the mastery system. Now, I have a lot of things to say about the mastery system, but I will try to keep it short, pretty, and concise, and easily understood, because there's a lot going on in my brain. Now, the mastery system, or pertaining to the new ways to explore, it started off very fresh and new. People thought of it as a grind, but personally I didn't see it like that, and that could partially be akin to my experience with World of Warcraft and actually grinding through levels. With the mastery system, it was more of niche, optional mechanics that didn't really affect your own power level. just improved the way you actually explore the jungle. Now, that was the philosophy going into it, but the actual implementation of the mastery system was quite bland and didn't have a lot of flavor. Now, in some areas, it was quite unique. When I first heard about the mastery system, I pictured, there was a far-off island in the distance, and it was covered in vines, and you had to go through there, but the vines are poisoned, and you needed the mastery to understand it, or you can light up the vine with fire and somehow get across. I don't know. Make something up in your mind. They kind of did that with the poison lore, blocking off certain areas, and you need that mastery to access those areas. And some things with leyline gliding. One area in particular is in Orc Basin, the far right corner of the map, where you have to get a hero point and a vista, and that's where you go through chasing or running away from Fallon. Now, those areas are quite far and few, and it kind of left a bland taste in my mouth because I was expecting more. Now, I'm not saying that the masteries themselves are perfect. Some of them are quite iffy, and they don't seem like they're needed in game. One in particular that comes to mind is the Exalted mastery line. I think it's the second or third one, but it's the one where you can summon an Exalted from a little pylon, and it'll go around reviving allies. That really isn't impactful in large meta events. You're just like, oh well, I guess an Exalted revived me, okay. Other than that, it really doesn't do anything. And it's not really like a mastery, it's more of just an NPC roaming around and reviving you. I was expecting more from it, but I think the main issue is the content that ties with the mastery system. There are a couple masteries that can be tweaked, but for the majority, I think they're okay. Now, if you provide the content, like say, there's a room full of poison and it's a story step, you would need the poison lore to enter the room. There was going to be something like that in the early Heart of Thorns, but they patched it and made it, or no longer made it a requirement, which I felt was a very bad decision, at least for the longevity of the game. It's kind of become a thing where you have a mastery and you forget that you even got it because you just think it's a part of yourself now and that it's always been with you, and you kind of take it for granted. So I think that the mastery system should take a couple tweaks and changes and tie in with the actual world of Tyria. And coming to the final topic that I would like to discuss about the announcement trailer, we have profession specializations and the new profession, the Revenant. There's been a lot of changes since the beginning of Heart of Thorns, and even since the beginning of Guild Wars 2 Vanilla. And not all of them are for the best, in some people's eyes. At least in my eyes, I like to think that ArenaNet hasn't forgotten about the core professions, but it kind of seems like they have, as the elite specializations have kind of become a needed thing in Guild Wars 2. And at least when I heard about specializations, I knew they were going to be powerful, but I wanted them to be an extension of their profession. I didn't want them to be the profession. I wanted it to be more of an optional thing, but it had a slightly more powerful tone to it. But that didn't happen. They ended up becoming extremely powerful and bloated, and necessary to complete any content really in Heart of Thorns, just for the sheer amount of trait and utility they have. And it's kind of sad in a way, but I feel like it's natural for this to happen. As new things come in, people expect greater things. But personally, I would like at least the core classes to be tuned a little bit on a more equal scale with the elite specializations, because they still are the class. It's just the specialization is a branch of, say, like Guardian to Dragon Hunter. Dragon Hunter, it shouldn't be the class, it should be the branch, and it doesn't feel like that at the moment. Things could obviously change. At least right now, I'm content. I'm not at the point where I'm shouting from the rooftop, change elite specializations. but it's something that's slowly starting to creep up in my mind. Now, the new profession, the Revenant. Amazing. In one word, amazing. But it does have its flaws. It is starting to kind of find its footing, but with the recent changes, it's kind of been thrown off balance. Originally, in PvE, Revenants were taken for boon duration. In PvP, they're good burst damage, and they actually have a decent amount of sustain. It's kind of scary. But the actual legends, very distinct, but they do need a lot of tweaking. Malix in general, nothing else should be said. Malix, it's a very weird legend in general. You're ripping off conditions from your allies and giving them to yourself, and then you try to have traits that correlate to that, but you don't want it because you have resistance, and there's a lot of wacky things going on with Malix, and in general, the condition damage that it does push out is fairly minimal compared to, say, a Necromancer or an Engineer. Hey, even Mesmer. Mesmer is capable of a lot more Condi damage compared to Malix. And Ventari. They have been tweaking Ventari a little bit to offer it a bit more healing capabilities by increasing its AoE. Honestly, I think it's at an okay place. It's a very difficult legend to play with, and I think people just haven't been as adventurous to try it. Now, certain people have gone out of their way to practice with Ventari, especially in raids, and it seems to be working out for them. Now, here's hoping that the general community can maybe have a bit more of an accepting tone to Ventari, though I am seeing it pop up every so often. Now, Jalis is more of the tank legend and has utility and the condition Taunt. Now, Taunt in general is a condition that I have a lot of issues with, especially in a PvE setting as a raider. Typically, Taunt is used to aggro the boss, but not in raids. The aggro goes to the person with the highest toughness. Even if you do taunt the target, they won't come and attack you. It will usually just take off a piece of their break bar, if the break bar is available. Now, in general PvE, or like open world meta events, that does take place. Taunt does work as it should intend, or it was intended to. But other than that, it's a bit strange the way it's been implemented. And Shiro, high burst damage, really great legend, provides overall a really, really good set for Revenant. And the Herald, Glint, another amazing, well-rounded legend that I think is in a really good spot right now, and I'm not really worried about it. So those were my thoughts on the Elite Specializations and Revenant profession. Now we've come to the overview section. I've discussed everything that I wanted to. There were a lot more points that I could make about at least the announcement trailer, but I didn't find those to be as substantial as some of the other points that I made in this video. Now, overall, I would just want to start off with saying this expansion has captured my love for Guild Wars 2. There's been a lot of flaws, a lot of droughts, a lot of QQ, but also a lot of great stuff. You can't just focus on the negative. You also have to focus on the positive to then progress. If you just focus on the negative, you're never going to get happy about anything. And this expansion, I don't know what it is, but it gives me good feelings. And knowing that Arena has been progressing and learning from their mistakes, and the community has been giving great feedback, others more so than some individuals in the community. But with every community, there are people that are very fanatic, but coming from a good place or a good heart. But overall, Guild Wars 2 Heart of the Thorns, in my opinion, has been one of the most fun experiences I have had with an expansion. Mostly because I've stuck with it the whole entire time and I've been creating content. But I do want to say one thing, and that's about the story. I love story, and I really did not know what the hell it was that made me have a sour taste in my mouth after I got done with Morgemoth. Spoiler alert. But I think I finally figured it out. Arena had projected this project, Heart of Thorns, dealing with Morgermoth. And towards the end, the very last two chapters, Hearts and Minds and Bitter Harvest, those were 2 episodes where you are actually in the dragon's domain. The rest of the story was about trudging through the jungle. And one point that I would like to make, Bitter Harvest, how did we know to go there? I don't understand how we knew to go there. It's like Rox is like, oh, I got it. How did Rox figure it out? They left a lot of open-ended things, and as I actually travel and I just explore Dragonstand, there seems to be so many pockets of story that they could have elaborated on. And I know I said I wouldn't regurgitate anything, but they missed out on a lot of opportunities, and I didn't understand how much they missed in the last few chapters. And I liked the conclusion with Morgermoth. I liked it, but I think it could have had like 3 or 4 more story steps in Dragonstand alone. And I think that's really what hit home with me, and that's what I finally figured out that I didn't like. And just side note, during the reveal and all the news of Heart of Thorns, they're talking about branching storylines, and we saw that in like the first chapter of Heart of Thorns, and then after that I think it happened like 1 or 2 more times, but it was very minimal, and that also was kind of a letdown. But the story itself was of such a good quality that it kind of blinded me from what I didn't like. It really took my energy to sit down and be like, what is this feeling that I have? So in that sense, they did a great job at telling the story that they did tell. But of course, room for improvement. And with Living World Season 3, it seems to be that they're making up for that. We've yet to know how much of the content they will be putting out, but so far so good. But overall, this expansion is my love. And hopefully for you guys as well. Hopefully you guys have had some good and bad things with the expansion. So yeah, this was the video. It was very short and just a look back in time. So hope you guys enjoyed. Like the video if you liked it. Comment down below about your thoughts about the whole entire Heart of Thorns expansion. And subscribe for more Guild Wars 2 content. I shall see you guys in the next video. Kroof out. Bye.